If kindness were a crime, then Zelda Fight would have been serving a life sentence. She wasn't the most decorated, she didn't arrive in a luxury car, and she didn't carry a title with the word director in it. But every morning, Zelda Fight walked into Peyton Analytics with a leather-bound notebook and a purpose: to treat clients like people, not numbers. In a sea of client profiles, cold templates, and generic replies, Zelda became the anomaly. She remembered things no one else did: the name of Vernon's golden retriever, Maxwell; that Constance once cried on the phone about almost losing her small textile business during the pandemic; that Brick Yates, the bookstore owner, secretly loved Agatha Christie but never admitted in meetings. And she never forgot to follow up. "Hey Vernon, how's Maxwell's recovery going? Constance, congrats on 15 years in business. Are you doing something special? Brick, I found a collector's edition of Murder on the Orient Express. Thought of you instantly." Some said it was overkill. Zelda called it being human. But in a company where the highest praise went to those who cleared the most tickets per hour, her efforts didn't show up on spot sheets. Instead, they showed up in emails that said, "If Zelda ever leaves, we leave with her." And yet, no one noticed. No one asked how she did it, except one person: Quinla Brexworth, her manager, a woman who believed compassion was inefficient and connection unnecessary. To Quinla, Zelda's warmth was a threat. To Zelda, Quinla's indifference was a warning. Neither of them said it aloud, but the clash between them had already begun. What Zelda didn't know was that in just a few weeks, all that compassion, all that dedication would be declared garbage in front of a room full of colleagues. And with a single press of a button, 1 year of her work would vanish. It was supposed to be a regular Tuesday meeting. Zelda sat near the front, clutching a USB drive like it was something sacred. Her palms were slightly sweaty, but her heart carried quiet hope. This was her chance. After 12 months of building relationships, tracking data, and preparing a 53-page audit that showed, without question, that kindness increased revenue, she believed maybe, just maybe, someone would finally see her. "Zelda, please connect your file to the main screen," Quinla said. The room fell silent. 23 coworkers turned their eyes to the monitor. The projector flickered and Zelda's masterpiece lit up the screen. Charts, notes, personalized timelines. Metrics showing client satisfaction had risen 37%. Zelda began to speak, but Quinla raised a hand. "I'll take it from here." What followed wasn't a presentation, it was an execution. One by one, Quinla clicked through Zelda's pages. This is a note about someone's dog. This is chit-chat about a farmer's market. And this, she sneered, is a message congratulating a client on their wedding anniversary. She turned to the room. This is not professional communication. This is emotional clutter. Zelda's breath caught in her throat. Her ears rang, but the room was deathly quiet. Then, without hesitation, Quinla moved her mouse. She hovered over the delete icon. "This entire audit is a waste of company resources," she declared. Click. The file vanished. 53 pages, 1 year of connection, loyalty, trust, erased in seconds. No one moved, no one spoke. And Zelda? She didn't cry, she didn't shout. She just sat there, heartbroken but dignified, knowing that the file might be gone, but the relationships still alive, still breathing. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet storm began to build. Zelda didn't move. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't even blink. Her hands remained on her lap, still and calm, even as an entire year of her life was erased with a single click. Across the room, 23 coworkers looked away. Some stared at their notepads. Others fiddled with pens or checked their phones, desperate to avoid her eyes. No one said a word, not even the ones who had praised her quietly in private. Not even the ones who had copied her relationship notes and used them to boost their own scores. It was the kind of silence that said, "We saw what happened, but we won't say a thing." And in that silence, something inside Zelda shifted, not shattered, not broke, but changed, like a steel beam cooling after fire. She realized this was not the end. This was the beginning. Then, a buzz. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, soft, deliberate, like it had been waiting for just this moment. She pulled it out, hands still calm, face unreadable. Marlowe Partners, the caller ID flashed. Her heart skipped. She stepped out of the conference room, still without a word, and on the other side of that line was the voice that would change everything. Zelda remembered the smell of fresh carpet and cold air conditioning on her first day. The glass doors of Petin Analytics slid open with a hiss, revealing polished floors and quiet tension. People didn't greet each other. They didn't make eye contact. They moved like parts of a machine, efficient, fast, silent. She was led past a wall filled with Employee of the Month photos, all smiling faces, none of which looked real. Client Relationship Coordinator, the offer letter had said. Easy enough, she'd thought. Answer emails, schedule calls, smile, be nice. But by the end of her first week, Zelda knew something was wrong. Very wrong. She overheard a manager whispering in the hallway, "We lost Tempest Livingwell and R1 Holdings last quarter. That's over 20% of our monthly income gone." No one talked about it openly. There were no team huddles, no crisis meetings, just a quiet, suffocating pressure to be more efficient and cut down response time. Zelda looked around. The problem wasn't efficiency. The problem was no one cared. Emails read like they were written by AI. Call logs showed client conversations under 4 minutes. And client birthdays, major life events, or milestones completely ignored. What Petin Analytics called professionalism, Zelda saw for what it really was, emotional abandonment. Zelda didn't fight the system. She didn't call a meeting or write a proposal. She simply opened a notebook. And on the inside cover, she scribbled, "Vernon, Golden Retriever, hip issues. Constance, 15th anniversary coming up. Ask. Brick, daughter studying literature, loves mystery novels." No one saw her doing it. It wasn't on her performance checklist. But to Zelda, this was the real job. Whenever a client mentioned something personal, she wrote it down. Not to manipulate, but to remember. Not to impress, but to care. 2 weeks later, she called Vernon for a routine follow-up. "How's Maxwell doing after the vet visit?" There was a pause on the other end. Then a surprised laugh. "You remembered his name?" That call, which was supposed to take 10 minutes, lasted 40. Vernon didn't just talk about his dog. He talked about his company's struggles, expansion plans, and the stress of leading a family-owned firm. Zelda listened. That became her method. No scripts, no templates, just human connection. When Constance's company hit its 15-year mark, Zelda didn't send flowers. She sent a simple email. "Congratulations, Constance. Your team's dedication is inspiring. I'm curious, what's next for you?" Constance replied within 30 minutes. "Zelda, no one else remembered. Let's schedule a growth consultation next week." Zelda didn't spend money. She didn't need to. All she gave was attention, and it was more valuable than any paid campaign Peloton ever ran. It started as a whisper. A few clients asking, "Can I be routed to Zelda again?" Then it became a pattern. Clients no longer wanted to speak to whoever answered the phone. They asked for Zelda by name. One client even wrote in a quarterly feedback form, "If Zelda ever leaves, so do we." Soon, something strange happened. Revenue began to rise, not in dramatic spikes, but in steady, undeniable waves. Clients who once only renewed contracts annually were now adding service upgrades. New referrals came in from companies Zelda had never spoken to, just because someone said, "Talk to the woman who remembered my dog's surgery." Petin Analytics, a company obsessed with numbers, finally had one that couldn't be ignored. client retention up 37%, Quinla noticed. Oh, she noticed. But instead of asking Zelda what she was doing right, she focused on something else entirely: control. Because in her mind, Zelda was no longer just an employee. She was becoming a variable Quinla couldn't predict, couldn't measure, couldn't own, and that made Quinla Brexworth nervous. Zelda never tried to win clients. She didn't have a pitch deck. She never followed a script. Her only strategy was sincerity. Vernon Hutchcraft was her first unexpected breakthrough. He ran a mid-sized manufacturing firm, sharp, no nonsense, constantly on the move. During a quarterly check-in, he casually mentioned that his golden retriever Maxwell had been struggling with hip pain. It was just a throwaway sentence. Most people would have moved on. But 2 weeks later, when Zelda called back, the first thing she asked was, "How's Maxwell doing?" Silence. Then, Vernon chuckled, not out of amusement, but out of disbelief. "You remembered? Most people don't even remember my daughter's name." That day, their conversation lasted nearly an hour. They spoke about his company's expansion challenges, the stress of hiring new staff, and even his thoughts on retiring early. From that day on, Vernon refused to speak to anyone else at Peton. He said Zelda made him feel like a person, not a payment. Then there was Constance Farweather, founder of a textile company. On a random Tuesday morning, Zelda sent her a short email. "Happy 15th anniversary, Constance. Your journey is inspiring. Are you doing anything to celebrate?" That message triggered something unexpected. Constance replied within the hour. "Zelda, no one remembered, not even my board members. Let's book a strategy session next week. I want to talk expansion." Zelda didn't bring flowers. She didn't offer discounts. She offered recognition. And in a world where everyone is shouting to be seen, Zelda's quiet acknowledgement was louder than any marketing campaign. If Zelda was the heartbeat of Peton Analytics, then Quinla Brexworth was its cold, metallic exoskeleton. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her authority came from metrics, not empathy. To Quinla, efficiency wasn't just a goal, it was gospel. Her favorite words during staff meetings were, "Trim the fluff," "Cut call duration by 30%, "We don't get paid to be friends." She rolled her eyes at phrases like relationship building or customer connection. She once told the team flat out, "No more birthday messages, no anniversary reminders. We're not running a social club, we're selling analytics." Under her system, clients were sorted into categories. Tier A equals high contract value, Tier B equals low maintenance, Tier C at risk but not worth the effort unless they escalated. It didn't matter if a Tier C client was a single mom trying to build her business from scratch. If her numbers didn't justify the time, she was moved to the bottom of the list. And when Quinla walked past Zelda's desk, saw her typing what looked like casual chat, she'd pause, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Because in Quinla's world, anything that didn't fit on an Excel sheet didn't matter. It happened on a Wednesday. Zelda had just finished a long call with Vernon, a catch-up that went deeper than logistics. They spoke about new warehouse challenges, his teenage son's college search, and yes, how Maxwell, the golden retriever, was finally chasing squirrels again. She hung up smiling. That smile vanished the moment Quinla appeared at her desk. "Zelda, my office, now." Zelda followed her down the hallway, her heart already tightening. The blinds were closed, the door clicked shut. Quinla didn't sit. She stood behind her desk, arms crossed, and launched straight in. "Why are you spending 45 minutes on a call that should take 15? Zelda opened her mouth, but Quinla didn't wait. "I've reviewed your logs. You're averaging fewer calls per hour than anyone else in the department." Her voice was cold, mechanical. "You do understand that this is a business, don't you? We are not here to chat about dogs, kids, or someone's favorite lasagna recipe." Zelda finally spoke, soft but steady. "But those conversations are why clients stay. They trust us. That's worth more than speed. Quinla leaned forward, voice sharper now. Trust doesn't pay invoices, efficiency does. And if you can't meet basic metrics, then maybe this job isn't the right fit for you. Zelda nodded quietly. But inside her, a quiet fire had been lit. Zelda didn't argue. She didn't beg for understanding. She didn't defend her choices with passion or tears. She just nodded once in Quinla's office and went to work. 3 days later, she walked back in, holding a document. No introduction, no explanation, just a quiet handover. I thought you might want to see this. It was a 53-page audit, printed, bound, tagged with color-coded sections. It detailed every conversation Zelda had with clients over the past year, but more importantly, it showed what those conversations led to. $12,000 from an impromptu follow-up with Constance. Early contract renewal from Brick after Zelda asked about his daughter. 5 client referrals from Tempest, each one mentioning her warmth. And in total, over $200,000 in additional revenue directly linked to non-essential conversations. Every note Zelda had made about dogs, anniversaries, daughters in college was tied to an actual business outcome. There were no inflated claims, no emotional appeals, just facts. When Quinla flipped through the pages, her eyes scanned the numbers, but she said nothing, because there was nothing to say. Zelda didn't stay long. She just smiled, turned, and walked out. She didn't need applause. She didn't need validation. She had the proof, and it was heavier than any spreadsheet Quinla ever worshipped. The calendar invite looked ordinary. Subject line, Department Review, Q4, Client Retention Analysis. Zelda felt her pulse quicken, but this time it wasn't fear, it was hope. She had spent 3 days perfecting that audit. She had tied empathy to numbers. She had proven with facts that relationships weren't soft, they were profitable. As she entered the conference room, she noticed people whispering. Some nodded at her with polite curiosity, others avoided eye contact. At the front of the room stood Quinla, composed as ever. Next to her, the projector was already on. Zelda, Quinla said, voice neutral, please load your audit on the screen. Zelda walked forward, hands slightly trembling but heart full. This was it, her moment, finally. She clicked to display the first page. Graphs, charts, anecdotes, ROI analysis from relationships. The screen lit up with the proof she'd worked so hard to compile. She turned to speak, but Quinla raised a hand. I'll take it from here. Zelda froze, and what happened next changed everything. Zelda stood silently beside the screen. Her audit, her proof, her pride was now glowing in front of 23 people. She expected analysis, she expected critique, but not this. Quinla clicked to the second slide and pointed with her pen. This is a note about a dog with hip pain. She didn't wait for an answer. Click. Here's one where you congratulate a client on their wedding anniversary. Touching, but irrelevant. Click. Oh, this one's my favorite. You asked someone if they were enjoying the farmer's market last weekend. She turned to the room, arms crossed, chin lifted. This isn't strategy. This isn't professionalism. This is emotional garbage disguised as work. Zelda's face flushed. The room was silent, stiff with discomfort. Quinla continued, we are not paid to remember birthdays or compliment people's daughters. This is not a friendship service. This is a data-driven business. She kept clicking. More notes, more dismissals, more venom. Zelda stood frozen, unable to defend herself, because this wasn't a conversation. This was a takedown, one that had been planned, calculated, delivered with precision and cruelty. Quinla stopped scrolling. She stood still for a moment, then sighed. Loud enough for the entire room to hear. This approach is inefficient, wasteful, completely misguided. Then she moved the mouse. The cursor hovered over the delete icon. A red trash can symbol, blinking like a warning, Zelda could feel in her chest. Quinla didn't look at Zelda. She looked at the room. Starting today, we return to strict professionalism. No more personal touches. No more of this soft nonsense. Her finger pressed the mouse. Click. On the screen, the audit vanished. Line by line, page by page, gone. 53 pages. 1 year of trust conversations, follow-ups, loyalty building, erased in under 2 seconds. The silence in the room was unbearable. Not a cough, not a chair creak, just 23 people frozen. No one spoke, no one objected. Zelda didn't either. Because in that moment, something deeper than outrage settled in her chest. She realized she thinks she just deleted a file. But she actually deleted the one thing keeping this company alive. Zelda didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She didn't beg. She didn't ask why. She just watched. 23 faces stared at the screen where her life's work had once lived. Now it was blank, sterile, like it had never existed. But Zelda, she was still there, still breathing, still standing. And in her eyes, something shifted. Not rage, not despair, but certainty. She looked around the room at the coworkers too afraid to speak, too conditioned to obey. Then she turned her gaze back to Quinla, and in her mind she whispered words she didn't say aloud. You didn't just delete a file. You deleted the only thing keeping your empire upright. You erased trust, and trust doesn't come back. She stood in silence, a silence so sharp it felt like it could cut glass. And right then, just as Quinla began speaking again about efficiency standards and protocols, Zelda's phone buzzed. One look at the caller ID was all it took. Marlowe Partners. Her fingers tightened slightly around the phone. She walked out of the room. No words, no scene, just quiet steps and a quiet storm following behind her. The revenge had already begun. She stepped into the hallway. The door to the conference room shut behind her with a heavy click, sealing in the humiliation, but also setting her free. Zelda lifted the phone to her ear, voice steady, heart pounding. Zelda Fight speaking. There was a pause, then a calm, familiar voice. Zelda, we've been watching you. She froze. This is Marlowe Partners. We've followed Peyton Analytics client retention data for months now, and we know exactly who's responsible for the spike. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak. The voice continued. We saw what happened in that room. You've built something powerful, something this industry desperately lacks. Then came the words that would change everything. We're offering you $500,000 per year equity participation and complete autonomy over client relationships. We won't interfere with your method. In fact, we want you to build our entire philosophy around it. Zelda gripped the phone tighter. The hallway around her blurred. It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen, finally. You're free to say no, the voice added, but something tells us you're ready to lead. And in that moment, Zelda knew she wasn't broken. She was just getting started. Zelda pushed the door open. The meeting was still going. Quinla was mid-sentence talking about new CRM templates and Q3 lead conversion targets. The room froze when they saw her. She didn't rush, she didn't smile. She walked to the center of the room, locked eyes with Quinla, and said calmly, I resign, effective immediately. Gasps rippled around the room. Quinla blinked, twice. Excuse me? Zelda didn't repeat herself. She didn't need to. She looked at her colleagues, many of whom had just watched her humiliated an hour ago, and said, I gave this company everything. Every phone call, every detail, every ounce of care I had, and it was treated like trash. She turned back to Quinla. You called it weakness, but that weakness made you more than $200,000 this quarter alone. She held her head high. I'm leaving, and I'm taking nothing with me, except the trust your clients gave me. And with that, Zelda walked out. No drama, no begging, just one door opening as another was closing behind her. For 5 full seconds, no one moved. The door had just closed behind Zelda, but the echo of her words still lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. Gideon Marst, the CEO of Peyton Analytics, slowly turned his head toward Quinla. His expression, a mixture of confusion and something else, alarm. He had just walked in halfway through the scene, long enough to catch Zelda's final line, but not enough to understand how things had spiraled so fast. What the hell just happened? He asked, his voice low but cutting. No one answered. Quinla cleared her throat. It's nothing. She was emotional, overly attached to personal relationship tactics. We've handled it. But Gideon didn't look convinced. He looked around. One by one, the employees avoided his eyes. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at the floor. A silence that should have lasted 1 breath dragged on for 10. Then Gideon asked sharply, Wait, was that the Zelda fight? Quinla's voice cracked. Yes. But Gideon interrupted, the one responsible for the Q2 retention spike? Quinla blinked. Well, yes, but she wasn't following approved protocols. Gideon's face went pale. He exhaled hard. You just lost the one person our top clients actually trusted. Zelda gathered her belongings. A quiet determination settled over her face. She didn't look back. With steady steps, she walked toward the exit. Each footfall echoed louder than any shouted words. Behind her, the room was still, but the eyes of 23 colleagues were glued to her every move. Some faces showed shock, others betrayed doubt, uncertainty creeping in, and a few, a flicker of awakening. She wasn't just leaving a job, she was walking out of an old way of thinking, and some of them could see it. The air shifted. A heavy silence lifted slightly, because for the first time, the impossible seemed real. Zelda's departure was not an end. It was the spark. And the room would never be the same again. The first call came quietly. Vernon's voice crackled over the phone. Zelda, I heard you left. I'm leaving too. It was a blow no one in the office was prepared for. Then came Constance. I'm sorry, but I need to work with someone who remembers me as a person. Brick called next. Zelda was the only one who understood my business. I can't do this without her. And then Tempest, and then others. One by one, their loyalty followed Zelda, not a contract. Peyton Analytics phones grew silent while Zelda's rang off the hook. The cold calculations Quinla trusted had failed. The one thing she ignored, the human connection, was walking out the door. Quinla picked up the phone. 1 call, 2 calls, 3. Her voice was steady at first. Why did you leave, Peyton? But the answers came cold, precise, and cutting. Because she never asked about my daughter, like Zelda did. Because no one remembered my birthday anymore. Because it felt like we were just numbers, not people. With every call, Quinla's confidence chipped away. Her spreadsheets didn't show these losses. Her metrics didn't measure this pain. But the client's words were clear. They left because someone cared, and that someone wasn't here anymore. Zelda didn't make a single call. She didn't send a single recruitment email. All she did was update her LinkedIn profile. Simple, quiet, professional. And then the phone started ringing. 1 call, then another. A familiar voice. Zelda, I heard you're with Marlo now. Can we talk about moving our account? No scripts, no pitches, just trust. Clients who once relied on her called, not because she asked them, but because they chose to. Peyton Analytics lost clients by trying to control. Zelda gained clients by simply being herself. And the difference? Millions of dollars. 60% of their clients vanished. Contracts ended. Calls stopped. Peyton Analytics was bleeding revenue fast and hard. The board convened emergency meetings. Layoffs were announced. Office space was sold. Rumors swirled about potential mergers or worse, bankruptcy. Quinlan's grip on power weakened with every lost account. The cold calculations she trusted could not save the sinking ship. Peyton was drowning in its own neglect. And the silent truth was clear. You can't build a company on numbers alone. People matter. Zelda's phone buzzed. The caller ID read Gideon Varst, the CEO she once knew. She answered. Zelda, this is Gideon. We've been following your success at Marlowe Partners. Would you consider returning as Director of Client Relations? Zelda smiled softly. Thank you, Gideon, but I'm already where they value people, from day one. The line went silent. No pressure, no negotiation. Just respect. Zelda hung up. She knew her path was clear. Her journey was no longer about proving worth. It was about leading with heart. Marlowe Partners grew faster than anyone expected. Zelda wasn't just an employee anymore. She was a senior partner, an equity stakeholder. But beyond titles and paychecks, she built something more valuable, a culture. A culture where clients weren't just numbers or transactions, where every conversation was about understanding, not just serving. She introduced new training programs focused on empathy and genuine connection. She encouraged her team to listen, not just hear, to remember, not just log. Clients noticed, revenue soared, loyalty deepened, and Marlowe Partners became known not only for data, but for heart. Zelda's quiet revolution had begun. Quinlan's reign came to an end. After the catastrophic loss of clients, the board made a decision. She would not continue. Job offers dried up. News of the client retention disaster spread fast. Companies were hesitant. Everyone knew. Her name was tied to failure. The cold efficiency she championed had cost her everything. While Zelda rose on trust and connection, Quinlan fell, left behind by the very metrics she prized. Sometimes you don't need revenge. Let others suffer the consequences of their own bad choices, and you keep living kindly, because the world needs kindness now more than ever. Sometimes the world won't get your kindness. They might ignore it, dismiss it, or even call it a weakness. But kindness is your secret weapon, the foundation for real connections and lasting success. Remember, success isn't just about numbers and efficiency, it's about trust and genuine relationships. You don't have to seek revenge or prove people wrong. Let their own bad choices be their downfall. Your job is to keep being kind, authentic, and true to your values, because the world needs more people like you. If this story touched your heart and inspired you to keep being kind no matter what, hit that subscribe button on Athena Stories now so you don't miss out on more powerful real-life stories like this. Smash the like button, drop a comment below to share your thoughts, and share this video with your friends and family. Let's spread the power of kindness and human connection together. Thank you for being part of Athena Stories, where stories change lives.